Hello, this presentation covers how Lesson 3 of my unit plan titled North Carolina's Ecosystem will be implemented in my classroom. This lesson will be taught in an 11th grade classroom and we use the NC Standard Bio 2.2.1, which states that students should infer how human activities may impact the environment, specifically what factors impact North Carolina's ecosystem. This means that students should, when presented with an ecosystem found in North Carolina, be able to explain an environmental problem that is associated with that ecosystem, and they should be able to explain the source of that environmental problem. In order to fully understand the lesson and reap its full benefits, students should already know how to read and interpret graphs and that increased carbon dioxide from human activities has increased global temperature, which has led to an increase in stochastic events. This previous knowledge was covered in lessons 1 and 2 of this unit, so the material will still be fresh in the students' minds when they enter into this lesson. Students are still learning about the correlation between human activities and environmental impacts, so in this lesson, the impact of humans on North Carolina's ecosystem will be covered. This lesson is designed for a 90-minute class. The introduction and hook will take 5 minutes each, instruction will take about 10 minutes, and the group work and presentation will take about 20 minutes each. At the end of the lesson, 5 minutes will be allotted for an exit ticket. There will be a period of about 5 minutes between each of the sections to allow the students and the teacher time to transition between the activities and to give a little bit of wiggle room in case one of the activities goes a little bit over time. The introduction activity is meant to have the students start thinking about the content that they will be taught during the class period. This gradual introduction to the material will help prevent students from getting overwhelmed when they go through the instruction portion of the class. In this activity, the 5 statements that you see in the slide will be written on the whiteboard. Some of the statements will be true and some will be false, which is indicated at the end of the statements that you see. But don't write that part on the whiteboard because the students will be divided in half and will form 2 equal teams where they will then be presented with one of the statements and then given about 30 seconds to discuss the answer, to discuss whether it is true or false. After the 30 seconds is up, the team will hold up a sign that states whether the statement is true or false. They'll be given a laminated piece of paper that has true on one side and false on the other, and they'll hold up the side that they think is right. 1 point will be given for each correct answer, and at the end of the assignment, the team with the most points will be given 1 homework pass to use on any homework assignment of their choosing. The hook is intended to catch the students' interest and make them genuinely curious about the content that is going to be taught. In this activity, the teacher will ask the students to take 3 minutes to write down a hypothesis for each of the statements to explain why they are true or false. After the 3 minutes is up, the teacher will have the students discuss with each other very quickly, and then the teacher will explain why each statement actually is true or false to the students. After they are finished, the students will hand in the hypothesis to the teacher. This activity is a good way for the teacher to see how the students are thinking and what prior knowledge that they may have about the subject before the instructional period begins. The instruction period will be kept as absolutely short as possible to prevent the students from becoming bored with the material and sort of zoning out. The lesson will be formatted as a discussion that the students actively participate in rather than a lecture where students passively receive the information from the teacher. In order to facilitate the discussion, the teacher will write 6 topics, and those will be acid rain, beach erosion, urban development, habitat destruction, water runoff, and invasive species into columns on the whiteboard. And then students will participate in discourse to discuss any prior knowledge that they have on these topics. During the discussion, the teacher should stay mostly silent and let the students lead the discussion. I really only would intervene to ask Socratic questions that would lead the students to discussing the information that I need them to discuss and to lead them from one topic to the next. In all of the listed topics, students should form a definition of that topic, and should come up with any implications on a particular ecosystem in North Carolina. They should discuss what effects that these topics could have on North Carolina's ecosystem. Of course, any additional information that the students can provide is always welcome. The group work will allow the students to take the knowledge that they have learned from the instructional section and add to it by doing independent research. Students will be separated into groups of about 4 to create a poster about acid rain, beach erosion, habitat destruction, water runoff, or invasive species. Since they will only be researching one topic, they will then be considered experts on that one topic and can then impart that knowledge to their peers. Students can use drawings, words, or pictures that they print off or cut out of magazines to create their posters. During the activity, the teacher should walk around the room and observe each group and ask critical thinking questions to really encourage students to think more deeply about the subject and to think on deeper than just the surface level. The students must answer the questions on their own, but if they can't come up with an answer, the student should ask other groups, or I would lead the students to an answer by asking Socratic questions. Once the students are finished with their posters, they will hang the posters around the classroom, creating an art gallery of sorts. Once all the posters have been hung, the students will then walk around the room and read the content on those posters. Each student will then write a few sentences on the most important information that they gleaned from those posters, and then the papers will be turned in to me as part of the grade for their poster project. At the end of the lesson, students will brain dump everything that they learned from the lesson for 5 minutes as an exit ticket. During that 5 minutes, students will write what they learned in the lesson, what they liked and didn't like, basically anything that they want to write about the lesson, they can write about the lesson. Exit tickets will allow the students to reflect on what they've learned and will allow me to determine the knowledge that they gained and whether they're struggling with any content. This helps me in that I can compare the exit ticket to their introduction assignment and see whether they gained any new knowledge. The brain dump will be collected and would just be used for comparison. It won't be counted as a grade. As far as assessment goes, the introduction activity won't be assessed. Instead, I will read over the papers to become more familiar with what the students do and don't understand, but no grade will be given on the actual content of that assignment. During the group activity, I'll walk around the room and ensure that students are grasping the concepts that I've assigned to them, and I will also assess the students' use of critical thinking and the ability to make connections between topics by listening to student conversations and by reviewing the task in progress. During that period, I will ask probing questions to promote critical thinking and again, get those students to think more than just surface deep about the topic. The group project will be a graded activity that assesses the ability of the student to perform research and to apply learned concepts. The project is also meant to assess the student's ability to back any assertions that they make with facts and to share findings with their peers. Group presentations will be assessed using the rubric that you see in this slide. The grade will be calculated out of 60 possible points, and it is focused on the research that they've included, making sure that the poster was full of content, that the topic on the poster was relevant, or that the content on the poster was relevant to the topic, that the poster was organized and flowed well and could be understood, that the students understood and mastered the content well, and that the students included their little short report that they made when they walked around the room and viewed their peers' posters. The exit ticket, like the warm-up and hook assignment, will be collected and read to gain an understanding of what the students learned and retained in the lesson and to compare it to the warm-up and hook assignment, but it won't be graded for content. All learning styles and disabilities must be accommodated for to ensure that each student receives an equitable education. Scaffolding is used by slowly leading the students into the content and allowing them to build on previously gained knowledge and allowing them to engage in peer-based learning. Multiple intelligences are targeted by using visuals, auditory content, and social interactions in several spaces during the lesson, so at least those 3 intelligences are targeted. Students who are blind or deaf will be given the appropriate accommodations, including Braille reading material and read-alouds when they need it. Additional visual and auditory content will be provided for students as needed, and visual content can include something like videos with closed captioning and images that exemplify the content, and auditory content can include audio recordings of the lecture and transcriptions and closed captions for deaf students and blind students. I guess just deaf students. Students that are struggling with the content will be encouraged to use graphic organizers, such as Venn diagrams or flowcharts, and AIG students will be placed in specific positions in the group that ensure that they are given a little bit more responsibility. For example, AIG students can be designated as researchers in each group, and they will be in charge of finding all of the resources and ensuring that they connect to the group's topic. Students who struggle with reading or ESL students will be placed with students who are proficient readers so that those proficient readers can help them. And ESL students will be encouraged to perform research and to write their brain dumps in their native language. Lastly, to allow students a little bit more practice and a practical way to apply what they have learned, students will be given the option to complete an extension activity if they have completed all of their other classwork early. For this extension activity, students will research a North Carolina state park of their choosing and identify what type of ecosystem it is. They will then research the ecosystem that they have chosen and create a list of species that are on the endangered species list or that are extinct from that area. Students will then write a short summary about why at least one of those animals' populations has declined, focusing on human causes for that decline of the animal. This activity will help students to really understand what they have learned in class about climate change and human impacts on the ecosystem and how that affects them in their own state and in their own backyard. So this will really solidify that there is a correlation between animals' numbers declining and human activities.